Well, good morning. If you came on to the stream that I was doing before, some lotion with some sunblock. I'm not putting anything on my skin or hair today because I go back to work tomorrow. I really tried to win the lottery, but it didn't happen, so back to work. Okay, the dawn phenomenon. For those of you who did not see my brief live video before I went on vacation, I was exploring why my blood sugars were so out of control first thing in the morning. They've always been high first thing in the morning. And one of the things that was mentioned to me was something called the dawn phenomenon. Now, from what I understand, every single person, even if you are not pre-diabetic, even if you are not someone who's chronically, has insulin resistance or whatever, suffers from a small dawn phenomenon episode. So here's what happens in the body. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist. This is only what I have researched and only what I have learned. So if you know something more than I'm telling you, or you know something different than I'm telling you, please be kind and comment below so that I can educate myself on what's happening. From what I understand, every single person, even if you're not a diabetic, suffers from the dawn phenomenon at some level. But because they're not a diabetic, they're not checking their sugars, so they would have no idea. So what you're supposed to do is for 3 days, you are supposed to check your blood sugars before you go to bed. You're supposed to draw your blood sugar sometime between midnight and 2 o'clock, and then draw your sugar again at 4 a.m. The way that this works in the body is that most of us eat dinner by 9 o'clock. Most of us. I realize there's some of you on shift work. There's some of you who eat your midnight snackers. Okay, I'm not saying everyone. Most people eat between 6 p.m. in the evening and 10 p.m. at night. That's their last meal. Most people, after their last meal, go to bed within a reasonable amount of time. I do realize that there are people who are insomniacs, or maybe you have a newborn that wakes up every 2 hours, or maybe you work shift work. I realize that I'm not blanketing the entire population of the world. I'm just talking about the majority. Okay, so the theory is that it's been a couple hours since you've eaten your last meal, and then you go to bed. Now you've been sleeping 3, 4, 5 hours. So if it's been a couple hours since you ate your last meal, plus you've been sleeping 3 or 4 or 5 hours, you have now been fasting for 6 hours. The average person, not everybody, there are people that have disorders that this does not apply to. I'm not a doctor. So I'm just blanketing everything in generalities. So for the average person, 6 hours is what it takes your body to fully digest and process a meal. So now you haven't eaten anything at 6 hours. So your liver doesn't see any glucose, doesn't see any sugar anywhere in your blood because you haven't eaten anything, you're fully fasted. So now what happens is your organs contain glucose. Each organ can hold X amount of glucose. Your liver can hold excess amounts of glucose. It can store it. So what happens is, because the body knows that it's almost time for you to wake up, and you don't have any glucose present in your system, the liver all of a sudden will just release glucose within your bloodstream. You don't have to be a diabetic for this to happen. This is your body's response that knows that you're going to need energy to get out of bed, to get going, to do your normal routine. You've been waking up like this forever, right? So your body is responding to this. So the dawn phenomenon is that so my testing here, I've been testing the whole time that I have been on vacation. The first couple days of testing was just to assure myself that it was in fact the dawn phenomenon. And how you do that is test your sugar before you go to bed. Test your sugar somewhere between the hours of midnight and 2, which meant, yes, I had to wake myself up. And then test your sugar again between the hours of 3 and 4. And then don't eat anything. Test your sugar again between 5 and 6. If your sugar, once it's peaked, if your sugar starts coming down, then that in fact is the dawn phenomenon. And for 3 mornings consistently, my blood sugar was in the 90s before I went to bed. By midnight, it was in the low 90s, high 80s, and somewhere between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning, it spikes all the way up to even as high as 1:30. By 5 a.m. in the morning, without any food or anything, it comes down to about 116, 117. And then if I continue fasting, even with bulletproof coffee, by around 11 a.m. in the morning, I am back down to normal numbers. So that is how I was able to conclude for a fact that it was the dawn phenomenon. Now let me show you this. This is a blood glucose tracker that I have been using, and you can see what my averages are. So you can see before breakfast, 117, 117, 117. These are averages. So you can see up here that it's gone over 120. But it's just taking my averages of because like this morning it was 108, but yesterday morning it was 124. So it just takes an average. All right. But look at this. Before dinner, 82. Before sleep, 94, 93, 93. So my blood sugar first thing before I go to bed at night is actually substantially lower. And then of course these are average blood sugars. So how does that help me? How does it help me to know that I have dawn phenomenon and that it's occurring on a very large scale? Because I've spoken with several, I spoke with my doctor and I spoke with 2 people who are nurses who said that while dawn phenomenon is a common occurrence even in people without diabetes and without insulin resistance, they still don't want to see your blood sugar over 120 for a fasted blood sugar. That is too high, too high. That means you have too much glucose. So this is where intermittent fasting comes in. Because I have always lived by the rules of the medical society on how to lose weight and how to eat healthy, I've always eaten 4 to 6 small meals a day. Because that's what they tell you, right? Because I've suffered from sugar problems since I was a teenager, like hypoglycemia. So I've had blood sugar problems for a very long time. And they always tell you, instead of eating 3 meals a day, snack, 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 snack. This is actually making the problem worse, because what you are doing is you are teaching your body that it never has to burn its own stores. It can simply rely on the glucose that you feed it on a continual basis. Because what happens when you're hypoglycemic? What happens when you're diabetic? What happens when you're insulin resistant? You have an enormous amount of insulin in your bloodstream, and insulin is a hormone. Okay? But if your blood cells can no longer take that insulin and use it to dispose of sugar, what happens to the sugar? The sugar builds, and it 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 builds. Then you end up with a diabetes epidemic. that's what you end up with. You know, you have high processed, high carbs. The other thing that insulin does to you is the insulin makes you hungry 24 hours a day. I can tell you from me personally that before I started keto, I was hungry all of the time, and not a normal hunger like, oh gosh, I've been up a couple hours now, I'm hungry. I'm starving. I am starving. And then by the time that you get something to eat, you are at a high probability of binge eating, which was a huge problem of mine. So I had this love hate relationship with food, and little did I know that love hate relationship with food was stemming from the fact that I had insulin, this massive hormone in my body telling me I was hungry. It was replicating the sensation of being starving. I had the mental crap going on telling me you're fat, you don't need to eat 6 small tiny meals a day, watch your calories, cut back on fat, cut back on this, cut back on that. And I was feeding my body a steady stream of glucose in the form of fruits, in the form of whole grains and nuts and seeds. And even though I was doing it healthy, I was never teaching my body how to burn its own fat stores, how to burn its own sugar stores, right? And so I got caught up in that relentless hamster wheel that the medical, I mean, eat 6 small meals a day. I want you to think about this. We all know how glucose works. We all know how insulin works. In a normal person, now you take somebody, good morning, who is insulin resistant. You take someone like me who's got metabolic syndrome, someone like me who's got a chronically slow heart rate. That's why I have a pacemaker. So my metabolism is low, my heart rate is low, my hormones have bottomed out. I am in full-on menopause with zero estrogen in my body. So I have everything going against me. And then a doctor says, eat 6 small meals a day. Well, the principle of it sounds right, right? Because that's how we're going to keep our sugar level, is by maintaining a constant source of sugar. But what happens in someone like me who has a low metabolism and the inability to burn that sugar? Because my blood cells will no longer receive the insulin. What happens? I'll tell you what happens. My body continually produces insulin because it sees all this sugar in my body and it doesn't understand. So it's panicking. It's in panic mode, and it's going to just keep producing insulin. Insulin is a hormone, and that's what replicates. That's why you see people who are hypoglycemic, and when they hit that hypoglycemic and they're shaken and they're in a panic state, and I can tell you because I've been there millions of times, you eat and you eat and you just keep eating until your sugar normalizes, and 5 minutes later you're hungry again. Why? Because you've started the insulin cycle all over again, but you haven't depleted the glucose that's in your bloodstream. So this is a vicious cycle. It's really hard to explain intermittent fasting to people who have never suffered from what I had was reactive hypoglycemia. And that's from having high blood sugar, high blood sugar, high blood sugar, high blood sugar. Then all of a sudden my liver freaks and dumps a bunch of insulin in my bloodstream, and 1 out of 100 times my blood cells actually go, oh, okay, that's insulin, let's get rid of this sugar, right? Sometimes my body processes it, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not a full diabetic. I'm not dependent upon having shots, but I am in that in-between stage, and that's what I'm trying to repair with the ketogenic diet and with intermittent fasting. I've got to be honest with you. I know that my body is transitioning to fat adaptive. Wednesday will be 8 weeks that I have completed on keto. I am doing clean keto. I'm doing strict keto, which means that my processed foods are at an absolute minimum. I am cooking my chicken. I am cooking my beef. I am cooking my fish. I'm trying to stay away from processed foods. I gotta be honest with you, I've been eating some store-bought mayonnaise because I love Duke's mayonnaise, but it's made with mostly soybean oil. And I know that that's not the healthiest choice, but it's what I'm doing right now, so it's that. Hey, Mr. Rocker Vlogs, I actually have you playing right now. I've had you playing for several hours, giving you some watch minutes. So, so on Sundays, I like to have breakfast with my husband. My husband really doesn't, I mean, he understands, but he still has such a passion about food and about eating, and he still is listening to all of those voices that tell you eat 6 small meals a day, just eat healthy, lots of fruits and veggies, and you're going to be fine. He's a carbohydrate addict. Um, and so he doesn't necessarily understand or support the intermittent fasting part of what I am doing. But what I did yesterday to just kind of prove my own point in my own head was I took my blood sugar in the morning and it was 125, which is way too high for a fasting blood sugar. It had been 12 hours since I consumed any food or drank any kind of liquid that had any calorie content to it at all. So we're talking just water for 12 hours, and my blood sugar was 124, 125. By the time we got to dinner, it had come down, or breakfast, sorry, it had come down to 117. I ate and I ate scrambled eggs with cheese, a little bit of mushrooms, and 3 pieces of bacon. That was my breakfast. I'm talking little tiny small plate of food, but about 500 calories. And all day long, I struggled to get my blood sugar under 100 all day. I felt hungry all day, which tells me what? That tells me my body was trying to get rid of the blood sugar in my bloodstream and was unable to do it, but it was producing the insulin, which then made me hungry all day. So here's what I've noticed. I've noticed that when I'm intermittent fasting, and for me, the intermittent fasting is going to be I'm skipping breakfast. A lot of people say that if you're drinking bulletproof coffee, you're not skipping breakfast because there's a lot of calories in here. But I have already experimented. I took my blood sugar before I drank the bulletproof coffee, and then I took my blood sugar again an hour after I finished my bulletproof coffee. Hi to roommates. So I took my blood sugar before I drank this, and then I took my blood sugar 1 hour after I finished it, and my blood sugar actually went down 8 points. So the purpose of intermittent fasting is to deplete your glucose stores before you refuel. And that's what breaking the fast means. So what I've noticed is that when I'm fasting, I get like moments, like a couple minutes here and there of hunger, oh, I'm kind of hungry, I haven't eaten yet. But it's not really like oh my gosh, I'm starving like it used to be. It used to be like that. Now it's not. It's just kind of like, kind of hungry, should eat something soon. But it's not this like horrible hunger pain like I used to have. So that's one of the first signs that your body is becoming fat adapted. That my body's like, okay, I get it. I see what she's trying to do. What I have noticed on days that I intermittent fast, that if I take my blood sugar before lunchtime, even drinking the bulletproof coffee, that my blood sugar has come down from the 120s all the way down to normal levels in the 80s and 90s. So that's a good thing, because the less sugar that I have floating around in my body, the less chance there is of me producing excess amounts of insulin and causing those hunger reactions, causing reactive hypoglycemia. What this is also going to allow me to do is to combat the dawn phenomenon. Let's think about this for a minute. Now, with my normal work schedule, I've been on vacation, so I've been able to experiment. But with my normal work schedule, my alarm goes off at 4:30 a.m. I make my coffee, I get ready for work. I've had my bulletproof coffee. I have an hour drive to work. Then when I get to work, I make sure I walk at least 1 mile before work. I try to get a brisk 15-minute walk, mile walk. I get my exercise in, and from the time I leave my house to the time I get to work, I drop my blood sugar because I've exercised, I haven't eaten anything. My blood sugar is now normal levels. From that time to lunchtime, which is when I'm breaking my fast, I usually see a drop of 30 to 40 points in my glucose. That is really good. I feel better. I don't feel jittery. I'm not starving to death like I was before. I mean, before I would eat breakfast. This is before keto. I would eat breakfast, and I'm not kidding you. 30 minutes later, I was so embarrassed because I was starving. I was starving, and I didn't get it. I'm like, I just ate this big, huge bowl of cereal with milk. I just ate 600 calories, and an hour later, I was freaking starving as if I hadn't eaten anything at all. Nothing. And since I've started keto, it took 2 weeks. I was still very hungry. I had to use a lot of self control the first 2 weeks of keto. I had to eat a lot of fat. I wasn't really, simple carbs will do that for sure, yes. And especially when you have insulin resistance, such as someone like myself, when you're in the beginning stages of diabetes. Insulin is a horrible hormone, and it can cause all kinds of adverse side effects. So that has been my experiment with the Dawn phenomenon. What I have done recently is, because I've had the same blood glucose monitor for about a year now, and from time to time it misbehaves. I get error messages constantly. And that's a pain in the butt when you have to poke yourself so many times a day, to have to poke yourself one extra time because your glucose meter is not acting, well, it's acting up. So I've ordered a new one that also tests ketones. Um, the only other thing that I have to work on with keto, but I've got to do some research because I don't know enough about this. Okay, so now that I can get my glucose and now that I know exactly what I have to do to keep my glucose for the majority of the day, keep my glucose down so that my body is burning my fat instead of looking for a fuel source. It's already got a fuel source. It's got 60 pounds of an added fuel source. I don't need to eat for my body to work efficiently. Not like I used to. You still have to have calories. My goal, calorically, so I'm not starving myself. Calorically, I keep my calories somewhere between 1,200 and 1,700 a day. Most of the time I land somewhere about 1,500 calories a day. I make sure that I eat an avocado every day. I eat one whole avocado every day. That keeps my potassium level up. It gives me a really good, healthy source of fat. I do my MCT oil in my bulletproof coffee. I eat chicken, I eat beef, I eat fish. I eat a lot of fish. I eat some nuts, maybe just a small handful a day. I am addicted to Lily's chocolate, which has no impact on my blood glucose. It's made with Splenda. I know that's not the healthiest thing in the world, but I break off my 3 little squares every single day, and that feels like my treat. So that's what I do. But I'll be going back to work tomorrow after being on vacation. So I haven't seen any weight loss since I've been on vacation. My lowest weigh-in to date is 210. That's coming from 219.7. This morning I was 211.7. But what I've noticed that my weight does is that my weight is so wonky on keto, but I'm not really worried about it because I feel thinner. I know that sounds crazy. I look in the mirror, and even though I don't see tremendous change, I know for a fact that if I took, and I did take before pictures, if I held them up to now, I'm probably going to see a huge difference. I'm noticing my fat rolls aren't quite as bellowing over my pants. I've noticed my pants are fitting different. I've noticed my shirts are fitting different, baggier. My bras are fitting baggier. I've noticed my face looks thinner. My now I have this because I'm getting old. I mean, I have baggy skin. You can see that. I've noticed my double chin isn't quite as pronounced. I've noticed I'm seeing cheekbone action here. So there's a lot of things that I'm seeing. I've noticed my energy level is through the roof. I'm noticing that I'm not hungry. That is the biggest advantage of this lifestyle so far, is the fact that I'm just really not hungry. Um, and the fact I've been able to get off of metformin. So I know a lot of people, the biggest thing I have is telling people why I'm doing intermittent fasting, because when you say fasting, they think starving. And to be honest with you, I used to think the same thing. I think you're just starving yourself. You're just coming up with a fancy name for starving yourself. But if they, instead of calling it fasting or starving, they said depleting my sugar stores, that makes sense, right? So I do have some explaining to do to some of the critics in my life that don't understand, why aren't you eating breakfast? That's the healthiest meal of the day. Yes, it is. Breaking your fast is the healthiest meal of the day, but it's not healthy if you haven't finished burning off the sugar from the evening before, or if, because you are severely insulin resistant and diabetic, your body has dumped a ton of glucose in your body. What is healthy is making sure that you burn that glucose before you consume another source of fuel, and teach your body how to use your fat stores as fuel opposed to using glucose. So na. Does all of that make sense? Did any of that make sense? Did I sound like I knew what I was talking about? Seriously. Check this shirt out. Ninja. It's a ninja. I think it's a dog or a cat maybe. I think there's a cartoon character, but it's definitely a ninja. So today's my last day of vacation. I have a couple videos that I'm editing, but I'm not going to release them for a while, because the whole purpose of doing these extra videos, oh, I know. It's hard to move into intermittent fasting. I know that the first few days that I did it, I kind of felt lost because I'm so used to eating something. It's a schedule thing. Well, it was the same thing when I quit smoking. When I quit smoking, even long after the nicotine cravings were over, even long after that, it was the habit. It was the habit. Like, I was used to smoking 2 or 3 cigarettes just on my hour drive to work, and then being in the car, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with myself now? So it was a habit, and so eating breakfast has become a habit. A 40-day fast? I don't think I could do that. I don't think I would want to do that. Did you do it for medical reasons, or did you do it like was it a religious thing? Was it because I know that there are some, yeah, 40 days is a lot. You did liquids and stuff, right? Did you do like bone broth and chicken broth, or was it straight up just water? By the way, this bulletproof coffee here, I made it with New England health reasons. Yeah, I made it with New England's hazelnut cream. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And coconut oil. Well, I'm hoping you're getting better. Are you still in the hospital, or have they let you out yet? Anyway, the primary purpose of this video today was to conclude the dawn phenomenon. And I've got to tell you that since I've been doing keto, these numbers have gotten so much better. Please keep in mind these are averages. So before breakfast, 117 is my average. That's still high. When you're fasting, a normal person fasted should not have a blood sugar over 100. Your blood sugar should be well under 100 if you don't have any kind of insulin problems. So 117 as a fasted blood sugar is pretty high. Before dinner is good, 87 and 82. Before sleep, 94. I'm under 100, so those are all good numbers. And then my average overall is 103 and 106. Now, on this here, I'm doing this backwards. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself at this moment. On this blood clot, see, you can see these are my, I test several times, so you can see fasting after breakfast, 95. Water and fresh food and made home, yes. The hospital, hopefully something changes today because I'm really, really ready to go home. Well, I'm going to keep praying for you. I'm going to keep praying for some quick healing and that you can go home, but don't go home until you're ready. So this is after breakfast, 95. Before lunch, 85. Before dinner, 92. These are all excellent numbers, and this is off medication. I never achieved these numbers on metformin. So this is when I was living the Mediterranean, the vegetarian lifestyle, where I was eating whole grains and fruits and vegetables and fresh fish, and I was eating all of those foods, right? And I was eating sprouted breads that I was paying $5 a loaf for, and nothing artificial, all organic. I was doing the quote unquote healthy Americanized diet. I would have never achieved these numbers ever, even on medication. So you can see here fasting 104, that's pretty high. Before lunch 91, before sleep 91, and then fasting 117. Now this is 125. I'm trying to find yesterday's. So yesterday, this is what happens when I eat. After sleep, 121. And then I ate breakfast, 97. Do you see how I'm like close after sleep, 108? So what this is going to allow me to do, number one, I had to determine, is this dawn phenomenon that's happening to me, because there's a specific way that you handle. There's two different reasons why a diabetic's blood sugar will spike during the night. And the only way to eliminate and conclude that it's dawn phenomenon is doing exactly what I said. Testing your blood sugar before you go to sleep, waking yourself up at midnight, testing it again, testing it at between 3 and 4 in the morning, and then testing it fasted at about 5 or 7. If your blood sugar goes down after its spike at 3 or 4 in the morning, then it is in fact dawn phenomenon. So if your bedtime number is lower and your 7 a.m. number is lower than your 4 a.m. number, that means that it's sometime in the middle of the night, your liver is freaking out and it's dumping blood glucose. There's a few ways that you can fix this. Number one, if you are on the ketogenic diet, Dr. Eric Berg says that it can take 3 to 6 months before my body, for someone with my severe insulin resistance, with the metabolic syndrome, it can take 3 to 6 months for my body to become fat adapted. Once that happens, the dawn phenomenon will still happen, but it'll happen on a much smaller level. It'll dump less glucose because it'll be able to switch back and forth to fat source versus food as fuel. So it's going to learn how to do that, but my body is just very stubborn. So that's also why I don't want people to look at my weight loss and think that they're not going to lose anything on keto, because 2 months, I've gone from 219.7 to 211.7. So that's only 8 pounds. That's a pound a week though. I mean, think about this. That's a pound a week, but I've had weigh-ins even lower than that, by almost 1.5 pounds. So it's actually been more than a pound a week. So for someone like myself who I am struggling. Remember, I only got off my diabetes medicine. It took 10 days. First 10 days of keto, I went from having sugars that were out of control. They were considering increasing my medication. 10 days after I started keto, they took me off medication because why? My sugars were too low. I mean, seriously. I feel better. I have more energy and I'm not starving to death all the time. So I'm not living that vicious diet cycle where you know that you shouldn't eat because you're fat, so you don't eat, but then you're hungry, and then in a moment of weakness, you're just like, because you're starving. Then your insulin spikes, your blood glucose spikes, your hormones are way out of balance. So then you're like, you feel horrible. Physically, you feel horrible. You feel shame. You feel guilt. You feel embarrassment. And so then you're like, no, I'm just okay. I ate all that food. So tomorrow I'm going to be really healthy. And then you eat that apple thinking that you're being really healthy, and your blood glucose spikes again. And then your insulin goes out of control. And then you're starving and you're like, I really want to eat healthy, but I'm freaking starving. Then you start having low blood sugar because your body's like massively overproducing insulin. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. I've just noticed that everything just seems more level now. It's calmer now. I don't have those ups and downs like I used to have. I don't. There's been days where I've had 900 calories and really didn't even realize it, except for the fact that I track everything. I track everything. So the tracker that I'm using is Carb Manager. If you guys have found this helpful, whether you're watching this on the live or you watch this on the replay, please let me know if this has been helpful or if it's helped you understand any of this. That's what my weight loss looks like so far, the 8 weeks I've been on keto. As you can see, the first 2 weeks I dropped the majority of the weight. And then what happened is I plateaued for a week. I mean, literally plateaued for a week. Then I spiked up, then I dropped. And I did this. So what I've noticed is that every time I drop down to the lowest weight, I kind of go irregular. It's like, this is totally normal with the ketogenic diet. To see weight loss that looks like that is totally normal on keto. So instead of getting wrapped up in the weight on the scale, I want to show you something. I weigh myself every day. There are some people that they say you shouldn't do it, but I don't let it discourage me. So I'm going to go back. Okay, this is when I started keto. This down here, you can see I started keto on the 5th of May. So this is the 6th. I was 219.4. My average weight was 218.1. Right over here, average weight. This is my first completed week on keto. My average weight 214.9. Then I went up. That's where most people get discouraged and quit, but I kept going. Now I'm 215.6, 214. Look at that drop. That's the whoosh effect. 212.7, 212.3, 212.1, 211.8, and 211.7. So my averages, this is what I'm looking at. This is my Fitbit. I have a Aria scale that's synced to my phone. So you can see that even though this is my lowest weight so far, you can see last week, 210.1 was my lowest weigh-in, but you can consistently see that my average is coming down. And to me, if it's moving 0.1 a week, I'm happy. I'm happy. Because this is just something, it took me a long time to get to this place where I've realized this is my only option. I have done vegan, I have done vegetarian, I've done Mediterranean, I have done intermittent fasting without keto. I have done everything, and you guys have watched my journey for 3 years. I've done DNA weight loss. I've had all my blood work drawn. I've had my hormone panels done. And I love to watch and hear people that's excited about their journey. Oh, thank you. Thank you. But I put myself out here because when you go on Facebook, and this is where our responsibility as YouTubers come in. When you look on Facebook and you look on Instagram, there's so much fakeness. There is so much people pretending to have this perfect life, this perfect world. Their makeup's flawless, their hair's flawless. They put themselves in a pose that's the most flattering, and then they use slendering and they use Photoshop and they plaster themselves all over the place. And for that woman like me that sits there thinking, what am I doing wrong? And that's what I have felt like most of my life. What am I doing wrong? I'm eating 1,000 calories a day. I'm working out like a fiend. I'm losing a half a pound a week. This girl over here, she's eating freaking Fritos, sitting on the couch eating bonbons, doesn't exercise. She's losing weight, a pound a week, you know? And it's like, you can't always believe everything you hear on social media, but I think if we have a weight loss forum, if we have a health forum, if we have a physical exercise, we need realness. We need realness. We need to know when you're having a bad day. We need to know about that craving that you had to give up. We need to know about the struggles. And as I talked a little bit about today, the intermittent fasting, a lot of people don't understand that. And as soon as you say the word intermittent fasting, they think you're starving. Why aren't you eating breakfast? That doesn't make any sense. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Wait, you're absolutely correct. You're breaking your fast. There's no rule on what time you have to do that. So I'm still getting in my calories. Once again, my goal is somewhere between 12 and 1,500 calories. For someone my height, my age, my weight, it says I should be eating 1,700 a day, which is pretty easy to do on keto. I mean, just this coffee by itself is 300 calories. But it doesn't impact my blood glucose. So somebody's obviously here. That would be a good time to get off and say toodles. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. If there's any questions you have about Dawn Phenomenon, if I don't know, I will try to get you the answer. Anyway, thank you so much for supporting. You have a good day too. I'm going to be putting out some amazing, I have been experimenting in the kitchen with keto. I've got a keto collaboration coming up at the end of this month called Sinful Sides. I'm going to be making a steamed asparagus with hollandaise. Love me some hollandaise sauce. I think poached eggs, eggs Benedict is like one of my favorite. Except for now, I'm not going to be eating the muffin, but I'll make some keto rolls. Anyway, thank you so much for your love and support. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up before you leave here today. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. Was this informative? Would you like to see more stuff like this? Do you like the fact that I have my numbers there, my blood glucose experiments? Let me see why my dogs are going crazy. It could just be a squirrel. It could be that. So I don't think anyone's here. Anyway, I've got to get going because I got to go to the grocery store. I got to prep my meals for the week because I'm going back to work tomorrow. And, bye guys. Yeah, I hope you made connections and friends here. I want people to network and meet each other. Yeah, today my goal is just going to be to get some of my videos that I've already filmed edited. I'm going to go to the store, get the asparagus and the hollandaise and film that today. I'm going to do that video and get that edited. Other than that, it's just going to be to just relax and get my head back into work mode. So, as much as I don't want to, I'm going to. Anyway, so I will keep you updated on the intermittent fasting and let you know how that's going. Love you guys. Have a good day.